Welcome to another episode of We Don't Die. I'm your host, Sandra Champlain, author of the international best-selling book called We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. Today on the show, we get to meet Dr. Martha Reed. Dr. Martha has overcome many of her own fears and limiting behaviors, embraced her intuitive gift as a psychic medium, left a very successful 20-year career to pursue her dreams. She's authored 3 books, including The Dragonfly Effect, and co-authored 2 others. She has recorded 8 self-help hypnosis CDs, created a free self-hypnosis app, has become an international speaker, and currently the owner and operator of the Insights for Life Center for Wellness, as well as seeing clients daily in person or through Skype or on the phone. She's the founder of the programs The Dragonfly Effect, Onward and Upwards, and White Light Therapy, Spectrum Energy Healing. There is so much more to tell you about Dr. Martha, but I feel this incredible woman needs to share those things in her own words. You can read up more and find out more about her services on her website, which is insightsforlife.center. Dr. Martha Reed, a warm welcome to We Don't Die Radio.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Me too. We're recording this on a Saturday in January 2019 for our friends who might be listening well in the future. And you're in Arizona, correct?
I am.
Beautiful. I'm in Massachusetts, all bundled up with a little bit of a head cold, so I might need to mute myself and cough a couple of times, but not to fear. I'm here and I'm listening.
So, well, I'm sending you some beautiful warm weather from us here.
Oh, thanks for that. I love the sunshine. But Dr. Martha, tell us about you. There's so much that you have done, and maybe just a little bit of your backstory, how you got involved with this wonderful world. And the floor is yours, my friend.
Okay, so my story is a very, very long story, so we won't go into the complete story. But the short version of me is that I have always had the gift of knowing. I say that I was born with it because there's not a time that I'm aware of that I did not have this gift. And not that I always embraced it, but it took me a long time to even know I had it. But looking back, there was something that is just comes so natural to me that I can't separate a time when I'm not in that space versus when I am. It's just so who I am. And with that, growing up, I had a lot of challenges from other people, bullying me, to mocking me, to making fun of me, dismissing me. And it was very overwhelming. And as I grew older, I started delving into, what is it like to be psychic? How do you become psychic? So I went kind of an interesting path of learning, trying to figure out what that was. And I was like dreaming that someday I was going to be this psychic, not even realizing that I already was. Right. And that was the very pull that was taking me to it. Aside from that, I then graduated high school and went to go into college. And as I went to the college, I wanted to become a counselor. Drawing a blank right now. Oh my gosh. Well, it was a form of counseling I wanted to go to. My advisor said to me that he didn't recommend that I take that path. He told me, you're going to spend all of this money going to school for a profession that will not pay for itself, and completely steered me in a different direction and sent me into a degree of business. He told me that was safe and I'd be able to make my money back and to completely not go the counseling direction.
Interesting.
Which is really interesting to me because who would do that? But I feel like that person was put into place for a reason for me. And I went through and graduated with my degree in business, but I hated every single minute of it. And it just wasn't who I was, but I did it. And I, then continued on my journey of going into the corporate world, which you talked about. And while I was there was everything in me that was calling me to do something different. And I never lost that side of me that wanted to help and to serve and wanted to counsel on some level, which is where I began my next studies, where I became a spiritual counselor, moving on into my degree to holistic life counseling, and earning my doctorate in that. And from there, in the midst of all of this, I was opening my wellness center. I was trying to expand from a home-based business into my what became my center that I have now, along with salt float therapy. And that's kind of who I am and what I've done in my journey to get here. But the interesting thing is I was guided all along to get to where I am now. But that man that was the counselor who steered me away from that profession, he actually was a catalyst, a huge catalyst. And I believe he was an angel of some sort that was put there for me. Because had I went the traditional route of counseling, licensure, and went into that realm through insurance and all of that goes with it, I would not have been able to expand upon my intuitive side, my natural gifts, because I would have been limited by law. And I would not have been able to practice a lot of the things that I practice and use as modalities with my clients. Does that make sense?
It does. And it's interesting to me because even looking back on my own life, there's times that I think things could have been done differently, or why did this happen, or why did this person do that? But then go forward in time and you look back and it's like, aha, those things needed to happen the way they did so I can be just where I am right now. So to bless it, even though we might be in something tough right now and not understand it, there might be a bigger picture. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I want to ask you too, because I think, you, me, everybody, we live in our own shoes and we only see our life. So we don't often see how extraordinary we are. So we don't toot our own horns enough. But you're a remarkable woman who's really made a difference in the lives of just thousands, well, who knows how many people. But I want to thank you for all that you've done, because you've really given your life to making a difference. But as the show is called We Don't Die, do you have any stories that for yourself, why you believe in the afterlife?
Yes, I have so many stories connected to visits I've had from people on the other side, and whether it come in the form of angels or guides or people. But there's one particular story that I've been guided to share today, and it's a story that I've never openly really talked about, but I think today is the day. And it's not because it bothers me or anything. It's just something that hasn't been shared. And that is going back, a few years back, maybe 5 or so. I'm not actually sure right now. But it was the story of when my second oldest brother passed. And the reason I'm wanting to share this is, we're talking about how we don't die. There were so many signs that happened to me that tried to let me know that he was crossing, and it was outreaches from him. So I had, during the day, I'll just start the story because it's a crazy one. So it was Easter, and I woke up that morning to a song playing in my head, and it was driving me insane. I can't remember what the song was right now, but that day I remember it kept playing and I was overwhelmed with this form of grief. I felt like somebody was going to die. And being, the intuitive I am, and I have the ability to feel oftentimes what's going on in other people, I just kept feeling this feeling of somebody is going to die. Well, that morning, I just was convinced that it was going to be my husband. I don't know why, but that's who I knew. It was a male, it was close to me, and I kept feeling like it was him. So as he left, I kept telling him, please promise me you're going to come home today or tomorrow, because he's a fireman. And please tell me you're going to come home. And he's like, I know my job is to come home every day and to be safe. Nothing's going to happen to me. He goes off to work. And all of a sudden, my doorbell rings. And it's a coworker of my husband. And he shows up Easter morning with his 2 children, wanting me to babysit them because he wanted to do an overtime shift. I was obviously quite perturbed at the time, because why would somebody show up on a holiday with their kids without even asking you?
Right.
And it's Easter morning. And so he shows up, and I take his children in because that's just what I do. And in fairness, I had said, hey, if you ever need me to, I can do this. But I thought he might at least ask me if I had any plans or could do it. So he drops these 2 little kids off, like 3 and 5 years old. No, 3 and, maybe 5. So he drops them off, and I'm very perturbed. And so I'm packing all the kids up. I'm getting them ready. And I'm trying to think, how do I deal with this? These kids, I only have Easter baskets for my 2 girls. Now I have 2 other girls, and we're going to my parents for an Easter egg hunt and, the things you do on Easter, an Easter dinner. So I'm packing them up, trying to figure out what's happening. And I open the garage door, and I look at my car, and I'm like, oh no, I only have 4 seats in my car. So that means I have 1 extra child with a car seat that I don't know what to do with.
Oh, no.
So in that moment, I'm like, oh no. So I'll call my dad and have my dad come over, and he will be able to take one of these kids with him. That's how I'll do it. Well, in that moment, I became completely overwhelmed because I already knew somebody was going to die. And now it transferred to, oh no, my father is going to die on his way over. It was the
awful
worst day ever for an empath. And I was overwhelmed to the point where I could not shake the feeling. So now my dad's on his way over, and now I'm like faced with, oh no, who do I put in the car with him? Like, who do I sacrifice? Like, if he does make it here, what child do I put in the vehicle with him? And these were the most random thoughts that were coming over me. And I know that I was in my ego, and I was in fear, but yet I still had the connection to spirit trying to get my attention, but I was overcome with these emotions. So in the thought process, I'm like, okay, I'll put the little ones in my car, and I'll have my oldest daughter, who was like 9 at the time, go as his eyes. So he pulls up, and I'm like, okay, he didn't die on the way over, but oh no, what's going to happen on the way? So I tell my oldest daughter, you have to be his eyes, you have to be his ears. Watch the red lights, watch for cars. Like, I'm like putting this major pressure on her, looking back on the scene. And she was, like, okay, Mom. Well, as we put them in the car, I go back into the house to get the baskets because it's hot here, and in the end of March, and I was going to get the chocolates and all the baskets. And as I go into the house, there's this giant blackbird in my house. I have no idea how this giant crow-like blackbird got in my house. And my dogs were chasing this bird. There were feathers flying. It was hitting the wall. And I'm already upset and crying that my daughter, my children, somebody's going to die, all this stuff going on. And now I have a giant bird in my house.
I think the dogs want to tell their side of the story now, too.
I know. They're always trying to chime in and tell us. I think somebody's out there at the door or something, so I apologize.
That's cute.
That.
No, it's okay. It just makes us human, so it's just fine.
They're like,
settle down.
She's talking about us. It's our story.
I know. Go ahead. Just do what you can. And we can hear you, though.
Okay, good. So I went to, try to get this bird out of my house, and the dogs were flying everywhere, and I can't, get this bird out, and I'm crying and I'm a mess. And so I just dropped to my knees. My back door was cracked a little bit. And so I just dropped out of my knees, and I was like, angels, God, creator, source, fairies, whoever, somebody please come and help me with this bird. And when I did, this bird flew under my arm and right out the door. And it felt as if something just guided it in an exit. It was the weirdest thing.
But out it went.
Yeah. And so now I go into the, oh my gosh, superstition says if a bird in your house is a message of impending doom.
Right.
So I'm going back to, I'm like, oh no, this is more proof somebody's going to die. And so now I'm thinking that it's telling me that they're going to be dying or on the way to my mom's house. So I get in the car, call my mom. I'm like, Mom, you're not going to believe what happened. And I have a convertible. So I had the kids in the car, and one of the little girls that had been dropped off was yelling, open the top, open the top. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to open this top because I need some air. I just need to breathe. So we pull out, and I'm dialing my mom, and we drive around the corner, and I'm like, Mom, you're not going to believe what happened. I start to tell her the story of the bird. And right then, not one, but two pigeons hit my windshield, flew over the top of my car with the top down. Now feathers are flying everywhere.
Oh my gosh.
And the kids are screaming like the dogs in the background. And now my mom is freaking out because she's like, my mom always said that's a sure sign of death, a blackbird. And it was about a blackbird. And now I have the other two birds hitting me. And so, and she said, and then she said to me, this is a terrible day. I woke up this morning with a song playing in my head, so much so it was just the music that I had to get up and put it on to listen to the words. And that's when I told her my story and what was going on with me. So there's definitely spirit from the other side was trying to get the family's attention. And it was in a very important way trying to get a message to me. So we went to my mother's that day, and I just, throughout the day, I just wouldn't stop. Like it wouldn't end. It was just, the grief just kept going, and it just kept hitting me in waves. And to the point I finally was like, I just can't do this anymore, Mom. I have to go home. Couldn't even stay for dinner. I just needed to get home. That's all I knew is I had to get home. I had to get out of there. I had to get home. So on my way home, I was now again back with, oh no, my dad's going to die on the way over. We have one of these kids, the more stress of that. And finally we made it home. I'm relieved that all the kids are safe. Everybody's okay. And then I just had to watch my dad pull away. And I could never explain that feeling of how it feels to just watch somebody feel like they're going to die. This is the last you're going to see them. It was so overwhelming. I will never feel it again. But I know that it was Spirit speaking to me. And so we go into the house, and I'm going in through the front door with all these kids, and the phone rings. And back then I had a cordless phone, and it had a little caller ID on it, and it was sitting on its charger, and I was walking in the front door, and I look at that, and it has a 800 number on it. I become so upset because who would be calling from a sales call to be calling me on Easter? It's either salespeople. I was so over salespeople at that time. Yes. And I was so angry. How dare they call, 4:00 on a Sunday on Easter? And I just kept on walking, taking the stuff in. And all of a sudden I hear this little tiny voice from this little girl. She
she's 3 years old. She picks up the phone. Hello. I'm like, no, she did not answer that call.
Aw.
But thank goodness that she did, because she hands me the phone and he says, is this Martha Reed? I said, yes, it is. He said, oh, thank God you answered. This is the deputy coroner's office in Fresno, California. And that's when he went to tell me about my brother who had passed from a accidental heroin overdose. He had been clean for a while, and there was some guy who just kept bugging him, and he gave in. So when he did this heroin, it was actually bad. Not that there's any good heroin, but there was something, it was not legitimate or something. Anyway, it blew his heart up instantly. So he died while basically getting high on this heroin. So in that moment, had I not followed those nudges to get home, we would have never known. I hadn't spoke to my brother in a couple of years, although several times he had come to me in dreams where we would meet in spirit, and I'd see where he was living, what he was doing. And then when we would speak, he would confirm it. So I know they were actual, and I would actually travel and see him. But that deputy coroner said, you were my last call. I have been calling, nobody's answering, and I can't get a hold of anyone. So you were my last try before his body became something of the state, like they just cremate them, and then it would be unknown. So luckily that those kids were dropped off that day. Luckily we came home, but I believe that feeling was trying to get me to stay home to make sure I got that call. But either way, through it all, I ended up back home at the exact right time. I mean, literally walking in the door. And that was because I couldn't shake that feeling at my mom's that I had to go home. I just couldn't take it anymore. So I think spirit and our deceased loved ones, they communicate with us. Not that we always listen or that we're always, paying attention. And sometimes they have to take drastic measures to try to get us to, do something. So that was the backstory on him. And I think that's amazing because there was so much that came from spirit to assist in that. But then the next part I wanted to share is that, so then I sat in meditation, like trying to figure out what to do, trying to connect with him. Well, that night, I got the message to work with a friend of mine who actually connects people because I was very sad, and I normally would be able to connect easily, but I was having trouble because of my own grief and what I was going through. So I sought assistance from another friend of mine, and through our journey and our vision, what we found is the reason he was trying to get my attention is because he thought he was dreaming. So when he was on his heroin, when he died, he didn't know he was dead. He thought he was living in a dream land. He thought he was just tripping on, his high. He did not know that he was dead.
Right.
So in that, he kept describing to me that he had floated up. He said he was walking. He had been walking for hours, and he was looking for help. He was calling to somebody to help him find his way out of this. What he described as it looked like a sunrise or a sunset on the bottom. It was a gray, dark area in the middle, and then there was a thin strip of what looked like sunset colors on the top. But he felt like it was an endless walk and an endless journey, and he was all alone in this space, and he was calling and trying, because oftentimes when he was alive, it was me who he would call as his support to help him and to guide him. So I think that's why a lot of those feelings were there, was because his soul was like looking for help, because he thought he was just on a bad trip and could not wake up from it. And so he didn't even know he had died. So in that process, what we did was we went in and we, had a heart to heart with him and told him what happened. And he, shared with me his regrets and his, his sorrows and his apologies. He could not stop apologizing enough for, what had happened. And at that time, it allowed him to begin to rise up out of this space or this in-between section and uncorded him from his body so he could actually let go and transition out to the next world or heaven or wherever it is that his next place would be. I was not shown that. I can just only imagine that because he was rising up in this and he was in full form and I could see his body. It wasn't like he was a ball of energy. He appeared to me as if he were, on earth, how I saw him. But because he was rising up and moving out through this, I felt like he was evolving into something better. And there was a relief in him and then letting go. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
It does. I'm just picturing it.
Yeah, it was a very interesting scene for me in this vision. But
wow, I've heard just so many stories, and death impacts so many different ways and the different visions, and I just find it very interesting that it was like a wake-up call for you that something was going on. And did this whole experience help strengthen you with your own intuitiveness and your own self-beliefs and like, this is real, this is true, this is the direction I need to go, is to help people tap into their own, I'm going to use the term soul power, but whatever it is that you use?
Absolutely. It gave me 100% absolute, conviction and clarity that there is more. There is so much more beyond us, and that my talking with spirit and my connections and my knowing and my instincts and my feelings are beyond a doubt to trust them, explicitly. I may not, if my ego's involved or my, fear is present, I need to, and it also allowed me to remember to step outside of that and away from that to be as clear as possible. And I think that sometimes that's what happens is when I say ego, I'm not meaning it in a bad way. It's just our human self. And we sometimes, that story of that human self interferes with our higher self, our spirit self, and our knowing. And even in those moments, we have to learn to sit with that and separate the fear from the reality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Living in a human mind and body myself, I deal with all that. So it's perfect.
Yeah. So I was feeling this feeling. And, the other thing it is it gave me such a sense of what it feels like to grieve for someone and the loss of something. Because the feelings, I think Spirit was instructing this whole thing, it gave me such an imprint of what pain feels like for people, not just myself, the pain of him, what he was going through, the confusion, and what it feels like to worry and to have fears of dying, fear of death. These are things I hadn't really experienced because I'm not a worrier. I'm not somebody who suffers with those things, but I have a complete compassion and understanding for that now, what that feels like and how to help someone move through that and, look back and relate and move forward. And I think that was a very important lesson that my brother afforded me in his passing.
This is a poor comparison, I think, but I had to put my cat to sleep just 6 years ago. And the next day I had to do the final proof of my book before it went to print. And I had my cat a long time, and I loved her dearly. And what happened, I didn't anticipate, is because I felt such deep grief, and those of us who have animal companions know how much unconditional love they have for us and us for them. But I was in such a deep state of grief, and I had to experience that and then reread my book that last time before it went to print to know the impact that those words would have on a grieving person, because it lifted me from the depths of grief to giving me understanding and tools to help me feel better. And I can't help but think, you living in the shoes of, whether it's the fear, having death be so present and around, you have gone on to not only be a psychic medium, but get into hypnotherapy. And now everything else you're up to really does help people live fulfilled lives, get unstuck, all that, feel self-love, all those things. And you could never be doing them had you not had that experience yourself.
Yep. And I think that your comparison is absolutely correct and spot on with it. And it is truly about all those experiences, and the part about how angry I was at all of the things that was interrupting my grieving process or my worrying, the things that showed up, like the kids and the birds and the music and being woke up and like the caller on the phone, like all of the things I became angry about were actually things, looking back, that were things that were put into place to help me. And oftentimes we look at all these tragedies or all these upsets in our life and think of them as, victims of circumstance or poor me. And if we really look at the impact that moment had on the future event, and how it truly always is in our best, interest for these things to happen, they always come back. You can always look back and see how they helped you. So remembering that in those moments, that these terrible things are actually for our highest good, is very, very difficult. And we don't have to actually acknowledge it in the meantime. But once we do get out of it, it's very important to look back at it and to release the anger at it in that realization that it really was for you.
Yeah, it's hard. Like you say, it's hard in the middle of it to feel that, but looking back, that's the hard stuff is where we learn. And I do subscribe that life is an education for the soul, and that we're here to have such contrast of different emotions and experiences for that soul growth. And I wish it came from all the easy stuff, but it's the tough stuff that really has us grow. Dr. Martha, I want to hear a little bit now about, your business, what the Dragonfly Effect is, what you do, because just looking on your website, I thought, oh my gosh, this woman is such a giver. It's like everything you've learned, you continue to share, and you will custom mold a program for anybody with what they need. But it sounds like you really are passionate about the Dragonfly Effect and just whatever else, because I haven't spent much time with you. So I would love for you to share, because it's great to believe in the afterlife. And I think that's super, because that gives us a real sense of peace about life. But then it's like, okay, if we don't die, what's our life for? And I know you are passionate about having people live their best lives. So would you share about that? And why the dragonfly? Why the dragonfly?
Yeah. So part of talking about, the pain of life in the spirit world, I have a belief that here, as these human beings having this spiritual experience, we are always, taught we want to be in balance, we want to be centered. But it's my understanding, and part of this comes from the dragonfly is that we are meant to be a pendulum. So we have our spiritual side and we have our human side, and the center is where we become back to through experiences. So life has to swing us over into our human experiences for lessons and learning. Our spirit pulls the pendulum back to center. So we are very fluid. We go back and forth between our lessons and our knowing. And so I don't believe that we're always supposed to be at center and always try to stay balanced and calm. I feel we need these lessons and these emotions in order for us to evolve. So the dragon that I wrote a book, my most recent book is called Dragonfly Insights. And this book has been a long time coming, and I wrote it through a lot of retreats that I hold from the Dragonfly Effect. At one point, I was calling it Awaken Your Inner Warrior, but it has evolved into Onward and Upward, because it's all about transcending everything we've ever been through in the past and allowing us to be able to evolve out of those, murky waters or times and up and into the light where we're able to be, free and to move in any direction that we want. And so the dragonfly actually came to me in a vision several times, and this is how I know that it's one of my totems, is the dragonfly came to me and said to me that if a dragonfly is in perfect balance and working in perfect harmony, all four of its wings, that is, it is able to move in any direction that it chooses. And if one of those wings is slightly out of balance or out of calibration, it might still get to where it wants to go, but it won't get there without struggle, and it surely won't get there with ease and grace. If one of those wings is completely missing or broken, the best that it can hope for is to just spin in circles, not going anywhere, or become very dependent or codependent on someone else for its own survival, or possibly give up completely, maybe even just lay down and die. And it said to me, and the same is true for you. If your wings are out of balance or out of calibration, the same thing would be true for you. And those wings represent the emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical body. So we have to make sure all those areas and aspects of our being are nurtured and cared for and working in perfect calibration, or at least in as close a proximity as possible, so that we're able to move in any direction that we choose. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm just ready for more.
Yeah, and it's really, and then it would show me how, it literally gave me the vision of what it would look like if those aspects were missing. So that's how, at the time I was trying to, who am I? What am I doing? How do I focus? I've got 25,000 things. And, how do I narrow it down to say one thing that I do? And because I was guided to do all of these different modalities. So what I've done is, that's where I created the Dragonfly Effect. And basically, in that program, what we do is we look at our life in 7-year increments. So each one of these increments, like birth till 7, is the same kind of lineup as our chakra system in our body. So the birth to 7 is red. So what we do is we go through this time period of our life, and we look at it, we evaluate it, and we work through anything that would keep us from feeling ungrounded, unsafe, unfulfilled, not walking our path, not moving towards our destiny, and we go up through the crown. So there's a total of 8 different steps in the program that we do. And a lot of it is based off of the use of color, because color, being a frequency and it's all around us, is very powerful in helping to bring us back into balance. And one little thing I'll say is that, we're speaking of the color red in the root chakra from birth till 7. It's actually always active. It's never not active. It has learning periods that are more powerful than others. And that is one of the biggest growth time for that energy center is during that year. And when I was talking about that pendulum earlier, if you think about the color red, it can be very dull, it can be very dark and deep, and it could also be a very bright fire engine, radiant red. So there's a spectrum in this color and thing that either is too hot or too cold. And if it's when I say cold, that means that it has less energy versus too much energy. So sometimes if an energy center is too hot, you've got rage and anger, and you're taking risks that you shouldn't, and your passion is, you might have addictions. It's very strong and intense, versus the more water element, the cooler element, the less energy element, which would take us into fear, and it would take us into insecurities and being afraid, and phobias, and not being able to take risk, and not being able to move, very like your life force would be very, very dim. And so in the program, what we try to find out, what is causing this imbalance in our finances, our sense of security, and our feeling connected or grounded, or feeling like a leaf blowing in the wind. Whatever it is, we try to address those emotions, because the emotions are symptoms of something, and we try to basically bring it back to a neutral state, because of the experiences on both sides that created this imbalance. And we're never going to erase those memories, and nor would we want to. The lessons are there. We just don't want them affecting us. So everything we've ever been through in life is either good, bad, or neutral, or indifferent. And we want to be able to tap into those and tap back into center without them wreaking havoc on our lives.
Wow. I just wanted to ask you, is there anything you could give us, or a tool we could use now? I'm sure there's always listeners that will purchase a copy of a book or attend one of your programs and go to your website. But is there anything you could give us for maybe today that it could be just a little piece of what you're talking about that we could use to bring a little bit more balance into our life? And I'm feeling bad for the dragonfly with 3 wings. And but is there anything that you sense that might be just a little thing that could give us a little nugget of what you're talking about for our lives today?
Well, that's a big question.
I know it is.
Yeah. Well, I think that if we just pay attention to colors they're very important in our life. So an exercise that we can do to help us in that balancing is to do what I call color conscious choosing. So let's say today we wake up and we're feeling blue, and we're kind of sad, and we're just, we're just not wanting to go to work today because we're just feeling down. So when you think about the color blue, it's a very down color. If we pay attention to our emotions when we wake up, we want to obviously not put more blue on, because we're going to be adding to that feeling, because they do affect us. So what I'm going to suggest is, if you're feeling any way other than a way that you want to feel, if you have some articles of solid clothing, or maybe just anything that would be of solid color that light could go through, you can take these colors, and I use color swatches. I have actually silk scarves, and I'll place those over my eyes, and I'll check in with myself, and I'll say, how does this make me feel? Does it make me feel better? Does it make me feel worse? And so I'll pick colors that vibrationally bring me up into a better space of where I am. And then that's the color I'll wear for the day. I will I will use that color to be what helps bring me out of this down state. And the same is true if I wake up and I'm just woke up on the wrong side of the bed, or I'm just not, angry or just irritable. I'll look for a color that's going to calm me down and bring me a sense of peace. And then I will wear that color that day to help me. And I call it color conscious choosing because we're using that to help us feel the way we want to feel. It's a small thing, but it actually is a very big impact.
You know what I'm thinking also is when we were kids, there was a lot to do with color and imagination and creativity. And I know we've got our left brain and our right brain, but I can't help but think to give somebody a tool like this, focusing on color, might really engage that creative part of our mind. And I believe that creative part of our mind is a direct link to tapping into our soul power, our psychic abilities, and all that. So I just sense myself that paying more attention to color will help me be more in the present moment and more open to what's possible.
Yeah, and you'll notice that certain colors, when you find, that they affect you in certain ways, you'll start noticing in your surrounding what's actually working for you and what's not. And oftentimes we're attracted to colors that keep us the same. So we always pick the same ones. We don't go towards ones that make us uncomfortable, or we avoid colors that would create change. So sometimes that which we avoid is actually what we need. And we can tell that by just experimenting with it.
Very interesting. Well, thank you for that. I always like to get a little nugget that we can use right now because I definitely love researching the guests, and I have a lot of books on my shelf, and I'll have yours as well. And did you write a children's book too?
I did. My children's book is called Sunny Flower and His Fairy Good Friend, and it's a story of a little sprout and a dragonfly fairy. Go figure. There's the dragonfly again. Yeah, and it's a children's book for young children. I would say 3 to 5, but the story and behind it, the metaphor behind it, is good for anybody. And it's just it will help children who found themselves in a place that they felt like they didn't belong. Maybe they're being bullied. Maybe they're being their parents are going through a divorce. They've moved. They didn't want to. They ended up staying with a parent. So, and anytime there's some type of transition where they're put into a position that wasn't by their choice, that's who it's designed to help.
Beautiful. And get them started young on these principles. What brings you the most passion these days?
What brings me the most passion?
With your work.
I don't know. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if I can call it these days because it's something that's like I've loved to do for a long time now.
Okay, that works.
One of my most favorite things to do. Now, this is beyond my work I do. I love doing that and I do it every day. But one of the things I love to do is to gather women and go on retreats. And it's always to some place with warm water because I love warm water, tropical places, and I think it's very healing. And the color of turquoise really helps us with speaking our truth and living in that heart space and healing. So I love to take small groups of women on these retreats, and because there are a group of them, usually we're able to go places that they normally would not ever get to experience in this life because of either the expense or fear of not, of going alone, or just, and so I love taking people to these type of places who've never been, but, fulfills a dream for them, and they're able to do it and they make new friends, and it's just a great time. That's just something that totally fulfills me.
That's a great thing.
I love it so much.
I watched several of the testimonials of people that have been on your programs, and they're just, I mean, you can hear it in the voices and you can see the tears of joy in people's eyes. There's something about an experience with you that people get who they are. And I think some fears are put in the past and they can embrace who we are. I mean, like the flower, sunny flower in your book, I mean, we are all so unique. And to get to that point, to experience the true you and get that you are special and your life matters. And I know, Dr. Martha, you're one of those people. So I can see it in the testimonials of people that have been with you and worked with you, it's beautiful.
And it also reminds us that there's so much more than the pain we're in. There's so much more than just this. Living in that, like the dragonfly, starts out in the water, in these dark, murky waters. There's so much more above that in the light, doing that free and happy things. And there's just so much more than that.
That's great. We only have a few minutes more left. Is there anything I haven't asked you that I should, or anything that you're drawn that you want to share just as closing words?
Well, I don't know about closing words, but I do want to share that we were talking about me being in Arizona, that my sessions are available on video conferencing, phone sessions. We don't have to come into the office. There are many ways to connect with me if a person is guided, and they don't have to be here in Arizona. I am nationwide.
I think you're worldwide.
Yes, this is true.
You are.
Especially when I'm working with clients from a beach someplace.
Not a bad thing. Do you still do psychic medium readings and psychic readings and things like that?
I do. Yes, I do psychic mediumship. Or intuitive readings, however you want to call it. There's always an element of spiritual counseling with me. The way I work with people is I am connecting with their deceased loved ones, their guides, their higher selves. The message when they work with me is, we might tap into not just the people that they're looking for, but they're always getting messages and guidance for their life, basically. So it's kind of always going to be a combination with me. It's not just going to be a reading about someone else on the other side. There's always clarity and advice and answers that come through. So it's always a combo. Absolutely.
Well, that's who you are, helping people find the balance. And I wanted to ask you too about your hypnosis audio CDs. Are those still available out in the world somewhere?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They're available on my website, which you mentioned earlier, which was insightsforlife.center. They're all available on Amazon as well. But for the listeners out there, I also have an app, and it's a free app that I created. And the name of the app is Insights for Life. You'll notice it by a little sunflower when you pull up the App Store. And on there are 4 free apps. One of the, there is one for self-sabotage, negative thinking, panic, anxiety. Those are all free. They're just quick 10-minute resets, and it doesn't matter which one you listen to. They'll all help you in any moment of need when you need, just that little voice in your ear that helps you through something. As well as those same hypnosis CDs are also available on there for purchase as well.
Fantastic. When we are done with this interview, I'm going to go download one and listen. I could use a little empowerment today on my my day with my head cold. I'm okay, but I did feel a little blue today, so you're the perfect person to talk to. Well, Dr. Martha,
orange.
Thank you.
Put some orange on.
Orange is good. Happy.
Yeah, because if you think about the color wheel, what is the opposite of blue? On the color wheel is orange.
Oh, very interesting.
So if you're feeling blue, bring in some joy. If you're feeling unsafe, which is red, you bring in green. If you look at the color wheel, because green is about peace and safety and connection. So just always check your color wheel. You can find that balancing color to help you.
Very good. I'm sitting here wearing black pajamas, so it's probably not the best color for where I'm at.
Well, in the color world, black is all colors and white is no color. But in the energy world, it's the absolute opposite. In the energy world, in frequency, black is the absence of light, and white consists of all colors, the spectrum. So, yep, if you're feeling down, you wouldn't want to wear black because it is the absence of energy. So you want to feel better, you're going to want to put some white on, at least underneath it in your undergarment.
Okay. I'll do white with a little orange, and I'll sit and listen to one of the audios, the hypnotic audios on your app. Yay.
Yeah. Well, and even if it's not orange, but maybe just some orange juice or some vitamin C to bring your immune system up. So you can get it in that area as well. That would be probably more beneficial to your cold.
Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome.
Oh, Dr. Martha Reed, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you.
This
I
is
very
great.
much appreciate it, and you.
Oh, ditto to you. And to our listener, thank you for spending the hour with us. You can find out more about Dr. Martha Reed at her website, insightsforlife.center. As you may or may not know, all episodes of We Don't Die Radio, and now number 289, are available at wedon'tdieradio.com. And there's some free gifts there for you as well. I've got a great Facebook group that has been created by listeners called We Don't Die Listeners. You can find that on Facebook. Great place to keep in touch with people. I am starting to do my first live events in Boston, February 22nd through 24th. There will be speakers coming from around the world, all about evidence of the afterlife and living a powerful life. You can find out more at wedon'tdieboston.com. And in March, there will be one in Orlando, and you can find out more at wedon'tdieorlando.com. So in closing, my name is Sandra Champlain, and I'm always so delighted to be your host on We Don't Die Radio. I do believe that life is an education for the soul, that your life here on earth is important. Add some color to your life. Trust where you are is the right place to be. Everything really is a growth for your soul. Find out more, I say, about Dr. Martha Reed at insightsforlife.center, and think of that dragonfly. And we all have a little something that's out of balance. And boy, does it feel good to have those moments being in balance. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.